Welcome back to the McCoy Leadership Podcast, elevating your impact through valuable insights and conversations about leadership. Welcome back to another episode of the McCoy Leadership Podcast. Today we have AJ with us. AJ has built a multi-million-dollar software business from scratch with thousands of customers around the world without any funding. So if there's somebody to talk to us today about the entrepreneurial journey and how you grow and scale a business, I would have to say it is AJ. AJ, welcome. And do you want to give us a little bit of your background?
Well, thank you for having me on. Real pleasure to be here. So I guess where I should start? Where would you like me to start with my background? When I was a kid, or after I started the business, or right before I started the business?
So, I think for our listeners, one of the things that would be very interesting is telling us about those early days of Marketcircle. What inspired you to start the business, and how did you really go from a vision to a reality? Because I kind of take it that you started maybe as a consultant kind of, and turned it into a product. And so many of us have great ideas, but it's getting over that hump. So give us a little bit of that background of really what inspired you and what helped you to turn that vision into reality.
All right. So it's not as sexy as it may sound, but here we go. So when I remember, you're correct in the saying that I was consulting. I was consulting at the time, doing software for the likes of GE and all this kind of stuff. And I was watching a TV show on eBay, about eBay, right? And I'm like, man, who does auctions? Like, that's just so silly. Like, people negotiate when we're talking about business, we negotiate. You have an offer, I have a counter offer, and then we kind of get to the middle and off we go. So I'm like, how hard could this be? The naivete kind of kicked in, and so I said, you know what, I'm gonna make a eBay-like thing that does auctions, that does negotiations instead of auctions, and that was the light, basically. That was the spark that started. That was it. It's really that simple. Many people have asked me, like, what prompted you to, like, what got you going? And I've thought about it a lot, and it was just that one simple decision. And then the next day, I didn't know what the hell I was doing. Somebody would argue I still don't know what the hell I'm doing. But at the time, I had no idea. It was a decision that I made, that I'm going to do something. And so I started that way, and that was the inspiration for Marketcircle. So at that time, I was doing consulting work for the likes of GE. That was a different company. I started this Marketcircle company as a business to provide online, the ability to transact online using negotiations as opposed to auctions. And so that was the gist of it. That was the idea. And I built a system that did that, basically. And I went to raise funds with some VCs. I started the process. So even before then, I didn't know, what a business plan was like. I had to learn that in the process and do one. I didn't know anything about accounting or how to even make a business plan in terms of the financials, right? So I learned all of that, and the way I learned it is I just asked people questions, and surprise, surprise, people are happy to share when you ask the right way in a kind of humble fashion, right? And so I learned all these things. Then I started looking for VCs. Now this is 1999. Late 1999. So this, I'm dating myself here, but that was the time frame. There were not as many VCs. The internet was just, starting out. So I had to do some real creative digging around to find some of these people to pitch this idea to. And I got lucky. And one of those VCs said, I'd like to to hear what you have to say. Um, why don't you come down to LA and give, tell us what it's about. You got 15 minutes with us, and if we like it, we may ask you to stay longer. So I made the bet. I took a flight, went to LA, did this presentation, and they said, this is not a bad idea. If you can convince this other guy, we're in for a little bit of money. And I said, okay, well, great, set me up. So they set me up. I go and pitch this other VC, and same thing happens. This is not a bad idea. If you can get this other guy involved, I'm in. And so finally, I made it to the very top of the VC food chain, so to speak, right? And I was on the 50th floor or something like that in San Francisco with probably the top VC at the time. And I just happened to get there at the wrong time. So, I got there when the dot-com bubble burst. And I didn't even get to do my presentation. It was, I'm not going to go into the whole story there, but it's an entertaining story. But in any case, first I got 1 minute to do my pitch instead of 15. And then secondly, he got interrupted and then came back, and I didn't even finish my 1 minute pitch. And he, said, "You're out. That's it." And that was, the internet bubble was bursting. That was May 2000. So, so I came back and I had to pivot. And I had to pivot. So I pivoted back into consulting. And then during that consulting period, I needed a product for myself because I was losing track of all the things, because I was also selling, right? I was also getting the customers and doing the work. I had a couple of the people helping me, of course. And so I needed some kind of tool to help me, to help me manage the whole sales process. And, again, naivete kicked in. Well, how hard could that be? I'll make one for myself. And that is what is Daylite today. So many pivots along the way. There was no, big spark, that, no big bright light bulb or anything like that. It's just a process of iteration and adapting throughout the time. And being humble enough to ask questions, sometimes very dumb questions, but it works.
Well, AJ, I got to go back, and there's one thing that you said there. Now, not everybody knows this, but for our listeners, one of my side business or my side business is that I am an auctioneer. And so you said, who auctions things? And I got to tell you that, that's part of, my side business. So everybody wants to auction things because that's the best way to get rid of things. We're not like eBay. We do online auctions, but I am actually a live auctioneer and sell estates and real estate that way. So I just had to go back, and I couldn't help but to grab a hold of that one. So that's why that's why it didn't work, because auctions are great. So you really created the software out of necessity, right? I mean, the
current Daylite application was created out of necessity for my own needs. Yes.
That so often, we all get frustrated with whatever's available to us, and we want it to do something more than what it, what it does, or we want something completely different than what's out there. Yeah. But I think it's quite the feat to take that then from being something that you used for your consulting business, and then moving that and growing that to having thousands of customers across the world. What was that growth like? I mean, did you encounter some challenges along the way?
Oh, yes. Many challenges, further pivots. So let's go to the beginning. So in the beginning, what happened was when we built the product for our own needs, we showcased the product in terms of, hey, look how good we are in terms of writing software. Remember, we were doing consulting at the time, right? So remember, so remember, we were doing consulting at the time. And what we did is we showcased Daylite as an application that we built to hook you as a consulting customer so that we could write software for you. So that was kind of the thing. And so as people saw this application, they said, well, why don't you sell the application rather than, just use it as bait, so to speak. And so we were convinced to do so, and we did. And it took many years for us to be able to replace our consulting income with product income. So we started selling the product in 2001, and it took all the way to late 2006, early 2007 before we could say we could forego the consulting revenue and go stick to product revenue. So it took that many years to get there. It wasn't a overnight thing.
Got it. Now, as you were, and you've talked about this, in your beginning story about the importance of pivoting.
Yeah.
Along that way, even once you had the product and you started to kind of grow that, were there also additional pivot points along the way where you kind of said, wait a minute, I need to change this. I need to grow this. And once once you have put the time and effort into creating something specifically like software, how hard is it to pivot? I think of Jim Collins' Good to Great. He always talks about the flywheel and getting it moving.
Yeah.
Did you have to change the motion of the flywheel, and how hard was that to do once it was kind of started moving?
So it's a good question. And it is, the more software you build, the harder it is to actually change the software. One of the things that I think we did well was the way we architected our software, which allowed us to pivot. So some trials and tribulations that I'll share with you. So at the beginning, we used a specific database product, but that company turned out that we couldn't continue with them for various reasons that I won't get into. And so for us to survive, we had to switch databases. And it, as simple as it sounds now, back in those days, that wasn't a simple task to switch databases. But because of the way we architected things, we were able to. And in fact, many other companies contacted me after and asked me, like, well, how did you do this, right? Because of various things, various challenges with writing applications on top of databases. And so that was, a little bit of foresight, just, planning, a little bit of planning. So you don't want to be plan, and don't execute. You need to balance between planning and executing. And so if I were to share any advice with anybody, is that you do need to do some planning. You can't be totally off the cuff, but at the same time, you need to check that particular tendency of over planning, because I see that in a lot of people as well, where they over plan and some people under plan. So finding that balance is key, and sometimes you need a kick in the pants to stop the over planning process and just get going. And that kick can be revenues going down. That kick can be a customer just yelling at you because something you haven't done that you should have done. That kick can be you looking forward and saying, I'm not going to be able to get to actually where I want to get to on the current path, and having the wherewithal to zoom out and make that assessment yourself. So it could be any one of those three things. So that is one of the key things that I see when I talk to many entrepreneurs or would-be entrepreneurs, is the propensity to overthink and not execute.
So we've all, I think, been guilty of that from time to time. And I know even myself, sometimes I spend way too much time on the planning side of anything. It could be I spend so much time planning what I'm going to have for dinner tonight that I forget to actually make dinner, and all of a sudden it's 8 o'clock, and I'm still in the planning process.
We're up. Right, right. I get, I still get caught in that. So let's not let's not paint it as a whatever that term is. But the thing is that you have to catch yourself, and it's a natural tendency. It's a natural tendency. It's okay. You'll make mistakes. You'll do it again. Just forgive yourself, and tomorrow do better.
I think that's great advice. That's really really all you can do is to kind of start to think about how you can make tomorrow better. At that beginning point, so how many employees did you have, starting out? I'm assuming it was just you, and maybe where are you at today? How many employees do you have?
So when I started out, it was just me. Then, I added 2-3 people, and that was really the team that kind of got us to the VC point that I was talking about. And then from there, it fluctuated. Like, we would go up and down depending on various situations. We went as high as almost 60 people at one point. And as we're, adapting and structuring and changing things around, it fluctuates. We've gone down as low as 30 something and then back up, and then, so it fluctuates.
Got it. Now, kind of thinking about you have went through all of this growth. You went from being a consultant, coming up with a product, moving into selling that product. Mm-hmm. How did you maintain a positive state of mind as you worked through all the challenges that you've just shared with us? What would be your advice to somebody that is out there starting a business, whether it be a consulting business, maybe it's manufacturing, but we're all going to face challenges. How did you maintain a positive state of mind as you went through those things?
So I employed a few tricks. One of them was this notion of small victories. So I myself find that when I break up various challenges into smaller pieces, which is part of the planning process, right? Those smaller pieces, if I accomplish them, I feel great, right? So if there's a target and that's broken down into 15, 20 different smaller pieces, each time I do one of those small pieces, that's kind of like a reward that I completed that piece. So first I identified the piece, then I completed it. And that kind of builds both confidence and keeps your mind positive. As opposed to when I don't do that, and I look at this crazy, multi-month long target, I find that in 3-4 weeks, I start to get bogged down mentally, right? But when that occurs, I kind of zoom out a little bit and I break it down again, and then I go back on the road to victory, so to speak. The road with multiple small victories. So for me, that's one of the tools, is breaking it down into smaller pieces. When I accomplish one of those smaller pieces, I kind of celebrate, and that celebration could be just, it's me by myself sometimes, right? Yes, and I did it. Yes. And then with the team, actually, we do that as well sometimes, is that when we have these small victories, everybody's kind of happy that we accomplished this little thing. It doesn't matter how little it is sometimes, but it's a good size that you kind of, a week maybe kind of worth of effort, maybe a couple of weeks, as opposed to these long kind of things, because that can really bog you down. So that's one of the tools that I've used to kind of stay positive on these long trajectories, right? The other tool that I've used is movies. So
movies.
Let me explain. Yeah, let me explain. So there are a few movies that when I watch them, I come out energized. And I have 3 of those movies that I can remember right now. So one of them is Braveheart. The other one is The Hunt for Red October. and another one is Interstellar. And so when I kind of get bogged down again mentally, right? What I do is I watch one of those movies, and it kind of re-energizes me. And so it's a simple trick, really, right? It's nothing fancy or nothing woo or anything like that. It's just a simple little trick, and I've watched those movies dozens and dozens of times because I've needed a mental boost, right? So that's the second trick, right? So the first trick, the small victories. The second trick, when you do get bogged down, something to re-energize you. And then the third trick is long walks with music.
Okay.
Right? So if I feel bogged down, now in the winter, it's a little bit difficult to do this, but in the spring and the summer and the fall, I'll just go for a walk, and I'll walk, I don't know, 2 hours, 1 hour. Sometimes I go for a drive, right? And the music's loud. So those are my little hooks to kind of recharge get back into the right frame.
That's awesome. And I think the movies, I may steal that one. And, as I kind of think about it, that it could be so helpful just to try to get yourself out of the rut that you're in, and kind of get yourself into a better mood. And it gives your mind a little bit of a break on whatever the challenge is.
Exactly.
I believe in something that I read, you talk about the importance of personal growth for business success.
Yes. In fact, I say your personal growth mirrors your business growth, or vice versa. Your business growth mirrors your personal growth. And what I mean by that is that, when we start out, we really don't know many things, if anything, in terms of how to manage oneself, how to lead other people, how to deal with conflict, how to deal with rejection, how to deal with setbacks, etc. Right? And in that process of growing yourself, you will be able to tackle some of these business challenges. A lot of the times it's the reverse, right? Where you'll face a challenge, like a difficult conversation you have to have. And you're not comfortable with these difficult conversations. And so you're sweating, you're nervous, you procrastinate on those things. So that's a good time to kind of like, okay, well, what do others do about this, and where can I learn about getting over this? And so you then find things, and now it's much easier with all the social media stuff and all the books that are out there and all the websites, little tricks to help you deal with some of those adversity. But those little tricks are really personal growth things.
Yeah.
Right. When you say, okay, I got to have this difficult conversation. For example, you have to fire somebody, or you have to demote them or whatever. And the frame that you put yourself in is important. It's not that you're trying to be malicious to that other person. It's that you're probably doing them a disservice by not having that difficult conversation for themselves, for their own growth, right? So you have to then kind of think, well, it's not just about me and about me feeling nervous. It's about helping them, do the right thing for them. And that's a very different mindset than just thinking about yourself, kind of thing, right? And so that's an example of how that's personal growth to me. And I'm able to then execute on the business side because of that little growth at that moment in time. And so I think that's critical.
I would agree. I like it. I think, the key point of putting yourself in the right frame of mind is so important to anything that we do, because we can very quickly, this can be in business, this can be in your personal life. how quickly, I've done it at home, with my wife, where I'm asking what I think is a great question, but the frame of mind I'm in, it makes it obvious that maybe I don't want to
Yes.
do something or
Right.
what have you. So
Right.
I think that is so valuable for all of us. Well, the one thing we definitely want to make sure we get to is with all of the personal growth, business growth, and all of those pieces, what will Marketcircle's Daylite software do for others that are out there that might help them to grow a little bit and help them to achieve some of the things that we're talking about? So here's your opportunity to give us that sales pitch, but I'm also very interested to hear, from a leadership standpoint, how can this help you maybe concentrate on your business and not concentrate on the things that, the menial things? So give us your sales pitch.
So the inspiration for Daylight is really the key here. And that inspiration was my desire to help small businesses grow. So I've always been a champion of small businesses as opposed to big enterprises and so forth. And at the time, I had my own challenge of growing my small business, right? So that was the inspiration. So what I did at the time was I was looking as like how do I, when we decided that this should be more of a product than an internal tool kind of thing, is like, how do I help people? How do I provide value to people so that they're willing to buy my product and use it? And that was what I always believed in, which is helping those small businesses grow. So obviously I cannot cater to all businesses, but I cater to businesses where the majority of your business is driven by relationships, and it's driven by you providing a service to someone, so a consultant, a designer, a lawyer, real estate, etc. Those are the industries that we're strong in. So we're not about, for example, point of sales or anything like that. So that was the inspiration, is how do I help these kinds of businesses grow? And so the first layer of our application is really all about all the little things like the calendar, the tasks, contacts, emails, etc. Right? So those are the kinds of things that you would on a day-to-day use to accomplish whatever it is that you want to accomplish. Then we layered another piece on that, which was the people part of it. So whenever you're doing business, you're always doing business with another human being on the other end, right? The other human beings gotta want to do business with you, or when they agree to do business with you, you have to then deliver on those things. But there's another human being. There's basically two human beings. Who knows? In 50 years, it might be AI on the other end, but right now, it's still human beings. And finally, the third layer that we have on top is what we call the objectives layer, which is get new business, to help you get new business, and then to deliver on those promises. So that's the kind of pyramid that we've built the product on. And really, you'll see a lot of people refer to us as a CRM. And the reason that you see that is because in order for you to grow a business, you need customers, right? I can do all the productivity stuff that I care to do with the calendar, with the tasks, etc. But if you're not managing those relationships and you're not, managing a pipeline of potential deals, you're not going to be in business, right? And so out of necessity, that portion of Daylite is very strong, right? The whole relationship part and the customer history and all this kind of stuff that helps you. So that's the gist of the product, in the sense that what was the inspiration for it, and it is, truly, it was not to be a better calendar, not to be a better task manager, not to be a better contact manager. It was truly how do I help you grow your business? And that's the inspiration for it. That's what we try to do. And there's always things that we can, we continue to do. It's a big, you know, it's a, it's a big target, so to speak. So the application's constantly evolving to kind of meet those needs.
Excuse me. So, what is, well, two things. What do you see coming as next for Marketcircle, for the company? Are there, what's the next big thing you want to accomplish? And then secondly, as well, where can people find out more about the Daylite software and your company?
So, in terms of the product, the next piece is we've always had a really key integration with Apple Mail. So we're on the Apple platform, right? And that particular integration kind of changed because of some security rules and so forth. So what we're doing now is we're building in Mail into Daylite. And we'll be able to do some unique things based on the context that we have. We have your opportunities, we have your projects, we have the contact history, etc. So I'm super excited about that. Actually, it's a heavy lift to build in a mail client, but we're almost there, and it's looking great. So I'm really excited about that.
Awesome.
And in terms of finding, sorry,
no, I said that's awesome that you're going to do that.
Yeah, in terms of finding us, you can find us at daylite.app, daylite.app on the web, and you can download our application, try it out. You can talk to one of our advisors and even get some free onboarding help, etc. So we're here to help, and I really get excited when I see customers actually grow and they tell us, and you can see some of these testimonials on our website where they're able to do more because of the application because of what we do in the application and how they leverage the application. That really wakes me up in the morning because that's a great feeling.
Awesome. So all of our guests, we have 3 questions that we ask at the end of the podcast. Mm-hmm. And we just recently, 2 or 3 podcasts ago, added this third question.
Okay.
And so one of the things that comes up over and over again is we often say, what would be a piece of advice for a young person, or what would be a piece of advice for somebody that's thinking about becoming an entrepreneur? But we also all in this world are interacting with people. And I thought, wouldn't it be great if we started to ask a question around the schools? So, our elementary through high school students and the administrators. Mm-hmm. If you could give one piece of advice to the administrators of a school system as to what they should be making sure that students are getting today that's going to be helpful in the world of business and leadership, what would be that one thing?
I would say teaching resourcefulness.
Okay.
And so what I mean by that is you're not going to have all the answers to the challenges that you face. In fact, that's the nature of leadership. That's the nature of business. And resourcefulness is just figuring out, understanding that there is information out there, how you look for it, how you get it, how you ask for it, etc.
Second question, what is your go-to management or business book that over the years you've continually went back to and read over and over again?
So I've read many books. One of the ones that, I refer to my son, for example, and his cohort is an old book called How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Yes.
Dale Carnegie.
Yes.
Right? So that's a classic book. I feel that it made a difference for myself, being a techie, kind of nerdy kind of guy, and it's a great book that I think people ought to read.
Awesome. I had kind of, to be honest with you, I that book is on my bookshelf somewhere, but that's one that I read a long time ago and I've kind of forgotten about. So I might have to get it back out and read it again. And
Yeah, it's a great book. I've underlined it and whatnot, and I just kind of feather through it and remind myself of these things.
so the last question for you might be a little bit of an unfair question, because you're going to have to be careful with this one. In today's age, as everything is continually changing, what is your favorite piece of technology or software that you use on a regular basis?
That's a good question.
Now, not to try to help you here, but this is where you're supposed to say Daylite, right?
Well, yes, I do use Daylite all the time, every time. And I'd be a lot of trouble if I didn't use it, actually, for several reasons. But let's put that aside. I would say my watch.
Okay.
Let me explain. Time is an unrenewable asset, and once it's gone, you can never get it back. So I try to be mindful of time because you can't get it back. So my watch, in various forms, whether it's the classic automatic kind of watches or something like that, it's just being mindful of time.
Well, awesome. AJ, thank you so much for joining us today. It has been a pleasure, and maybe we can get you back on after the launch of the mail client comes out, and we can talk about that a little bit. And I think there's probably some other things we could unpack around leadership and growth, but thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me on, and I'd love to be back on. I thought this was a great conversation, and I'm sure we can dig into other areas, and I'd be happy to do.
Awesome. And for our listeners, until next time, don't forget to check out our past episodes if you haven't listened to them all, and don't forget to like us on whatever platform that you're listening on, and check out our LinkedIn page and our Facebook page for what we might have upcoming. Until next time, thank you.